What's up, space explorers? Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the most incredible survival stories from across the galaxy. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because today's story will absolutely blow your mind. Picture this. You're 140 million miles from Earth, on a planet where the average temperature is minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide, and dust storms can last for months. Now imagine you're not just visiting Mars, you're trying to survive there when everything goes wrong. Today, I'm bringing you the terrifying true account of Dr. Sarah Chen and engineer Marcus Rodriguez, a married couple who became the first humans to face Mars' deadliest predator. And I'm not talking about the cold or the radiation. I'm talking about something that should have been impossible. Something that changed everything we thought we knew about life on the red planet. This is their story. This is their fight for survival. And this is why humanity never gives up, no matter what the universe throws at us. But before we dive in, smash that like button if you're ready for an epic survival story, and let me know in the comments, would you have what it takes to survive on Mars? Let's find out together. Our story begins in 2157, during humanity's third wave of Mars colonization. Dr. Sarah Chen, a xenobiologist with degrees from both MIT and the Luna University, had spent her entire career searching for signs of life beyond Earth. Her husband, Marcus Rodriguez, was a mechanical engineer whose innovations in atmospheric processors had made him legendary among the Mars colonial teams. But they weren't supposed to be alone. The original mission called for a team of 12 specialists to establish research outpost Delta 7 in the Valles Marineris Canyon system, Mars' version of the Grand Canyon, except it's over 2,500 miles long and up to 4 miles deep. The plan was simple: set up a self-sustaining research station, study the unique geological formations, and search for any signs of past or present microbial life. But space exploration rarely goes according to plan. 3 days before the main team was scheduled to arrive, a massive solar storm hit the inner solar system. Communication satellites went dark, transport ships were grounded, and Sarah and Marcus found themselves stranded at the advanced base, with supplies meant to last 2 weeks, not 2 months. "We can handle this," Marcus had said, checking their inventory for the 100th time. "The atmospheric processor is working perfectly. We've got the greenhouse dome operational and the emergency beacon is broadcasting. They'll come for us." Sarah nodded, but she was already studying the canyon walls through their habitat's reinforced windows. Something about the rock formations didn't match the geological surveys. There were patterns in the stone, almost like tunnels. That first week, everything seemed manageable. They rationed their food, maintained their equipment, and continued their research. Sarah collected rock samples while Marcus worked on improving their solar collectors. They even joked about having the most expensive honeymoon in the solar system. They'd been married just 6 months before accepting the Mars assignment. But Mars had other plans. It started with the sounds. On Sol 8, that's Mars days, about 24 hours and 37 minutes. Sarah woke to a rhythmic tapping coming from somewhere beneath their habitat. At first, she thought it was thermal expansion in the foundation supports. Mars experiences extreme temperature swings, and metal contracts and expands constantly. But the tapping had a pattern. 3 short, 2 long. 3 short again. "Marcus," she whispered, shaking her husband awake. "Do you hear that?" Marcus listened, his engineer's mind immediately analyzing the sound. "It's coming from the subsurface level," he said quietly. "But that's impossible. We're built on solid bedrock." They spent the next hour with sensors and scanners trying to locate the source. The readings were strange. The ground-penetrating radar showed what looked like hollow spaces beneath them, but the geological surveys had indicated solid rock for hundreds of meters down. That's when Sarah made the discovery that would change everything. While reviewing the spectral analysis of her rock samples, she found something that shouldn't exist. organic compounds. Not just any organic compounds, but complex proteins that suggested not just life, but intelligent life. Life that had been dormant, waiting. "Marcus, look at this," she called, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "These aren't fossils. These compounds are fresh, recent. Something down there is alive." Marcus joined her at the analysis station, his face growing pale as he read the data. "Sarah, if there's life down there, and it's been disturbed by our construction," he didn't need to finish the sentence. They both understood the implications. That night, the tapping stopped, but something else began. Sol 9 dawned clear and cold, with the pale Martian sun casting long shadows across the canyon floor. Sarah and Marcus had barely slept, taking turns monitoring their sensors for any sign of movement below. The silence was somehow worse than the tapping. "Maybe we scared it off," Marcus suggested over their morning ration of recycled coffee. Whatever it was, Sarah wasn't convinced. Her xenobiology training had taught her that life, especially intelligent life, doesn't just disappear. It adapts, it watches, it learns. She was right. It's 14:30 Mars Standard Time. Their motion senses triggered simultaneously. Not from below this time, from above. "Contact on the rim," Marcus reported, checking the perimeter cameras. "Sector 7, about 200 meters up the canyon wall." Sarah rushed to the observation deck, grabbing their high-powered telescope. What she saw through the lens made her blood freeze. It was definitely alive. And it was definitely not from Earth. The thing clinging to the canyon wall was roughly humanoid in shape but wrong in every detail. It stood about 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs that ended in what looked like crystalline claws. Its skin, if you could call it skin, appeared to be made of the same reddish rock as the canyon walls, but it moved and shifted like liquid mercury. But the most terrifying feature was its head. Where a face should be, there was a smooth, reflective surface that seemed to bend light around it. And it was looking directly at their habitat. "Sarah," Marcus whispered, "please tell me you're recording this." "Every second," she replied, her hand shaking as she adjusted the camera settings. This is the discovery of the century, first confirmed intelligent alien life." The creature remained motionless for exactly 17 minutes. Sarah timed it. Then, without warning, it began to move. What happened next defied everything they knew about physics and biology. The creature didn't climb down the canyon wall. It flowed. Its body seemed to merge with the rock face, moving through solid stone like water through a sponge. "That's impossible," Marcus breathed. "Matter can't just phase through matter like that." But they were watching it happen. The creature emerged from the canyon floor about 50 meters from their habitat, its form solidifying as it stepped onto the surface. For a moment it stood perfectly still, that reflective face turned toward their home. Then it began to circle. "It's studying us," Sarah realized. "Look at the pattern. It's mapping our perimeter, checking our defenses." Marcus was already at the security console, activating their defensive systems. The habitat had been designed to withstand dust storms and equipment failures, not hostile alien encounters, but it was better than nothing. As he expected to airline, more people had gathered. But it was better. "Perimeter fence is active," he reported. "Motion sensors are tracking it. Emergency beacon is..." "Wait." His face went pale. "Sarah, the emergency beacon, it's not broadcasting anymore." She spun around from the telescope. "What do you mean, it's not broadcasting?" "Means something disabled it. From the outside, while we were watching that thing circle us." The implications hit them both at the same time. The creature they were watching wasn't alone. While they'd been focused on the obvious threat, something else had been working to cut off their communications with the outside world. "How many of them are there?" Sarah whispered. As if in answer to her question, the motion sensors began triggering in sequence around their entire perimeter. The displays showed at least 6 distinct contacts, all moving with the same fluid, impossible grace. They were surrounded, but there was something else. Something Sarah hadn't told Marcus yet. During her analysis of the organic compounds, she'd found something that terrified her more than the creatures outside. The proteins weren't just alien, they were adaptive. They were designed to break down and reconstruct other organic matter. In simple terms, these creatures didn't just hunt for food. They hunted to reproduce. And every scan she'd run suggested that human DNA would be perfectly compatible with their reproductive cycle. As the sun set on Sol 9, casting the canyon into deep shadow, Sarah and Marcus realized they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to remain human. The first attack came at 3:47 Mars Standard Time. Sarah jolted awake to the sound of their habitat's hull groaning under stress. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as the structural integrity alarm screamed warnings. "Marcus!" she shouted, but he was already up, rushing to the engineering console. "Something's trying to get through the outer hull," he reported, his fingers flying over the diagnostic displays. "But that's impossible. The hull is rated for micrometeorite impacts and pressure differentials. Nothing should be able to..." The sound was unlike anything they'd ever heard. Not cutting, not breaking. Dissolving. Like acid eating through metal, but faster and more controlled. "Section C7, Marcus called out. "Whatever it's doing, it's working through the hull plating like it's not even there." Sarah grabbed her scanner and ran to the affected section. What she saw through the internal cameras made her stomach turn. One of the creatures had somehow merged partially with their hull, its crystalline claws extending into the metal itself. But it wasn't just breaking through, it was analyzing the structure, learning how their technology worked. "It's not trying to get in," she realized with growing horror. "It's trying to understand us." The attack stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The creature withdrew, leaving behind a perfectly circular hole in their outer hull that sealed itself moments later with some kind of organic membrane. Did it just repair our hull? Marcus stared at the readings in disbelief. Sarah nodded grimly. "It doesn't want to kill us quickly. It wants to study us first." Over the next several hours, the pattern repeated. The creatures would probe different sections of their habitat, testing their defenses, learning their capabilities. Each time, they would withdraw before causing critical damage, sealing any breaches they created. It was methodical, it was intelligent, and it was absolutely terrifying. By Sol 10, Sarah and Marcus had established a routine. They took shifts monitoring the creature's activities, while the other worked on strengthening their defenses or trying to repair their communications equipment. But the creatures were learning faster than they could adapt. "Look at this," Sarah said, showing Marcus the latest sensor readings. "They're not just studying our habitat anymore. They're studying us." The data showed that the creatures had somehow been analyzing their biological signatures through the hull. Heart rates, breathing patterns, even brain activity. It was all being monitored and recorded. "They know when we sleep," Marcus realized. "They know when we're afraid." They're building a psychological profile. That's when Sarah decided she had to tell him about the reproductive analysis. "Marcus, there's something else. Something I discovered about these creatures that I haven't told you." She pulled up her biological analysis on the main screen. The complex protein structures rotated slowly, their molecular bonds highlighted in different colors. "These aren't just predators," she explained. "They're parasitic reproducers. They don't just kill their prey, they use them as incubators for their offspring." Marcus stared at the data, his engineering mind processing the implications. "You're saying they want to use us to make more of them?" "The protein analysis suggests they can rewrite DNA at the cellular level," Sarah continued. They could theoretically transform a human host into something like them, while keeping the host alive and conscious throughout the process. The silence stretched between them as the full horror of their situation sank in. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting to remain themselves. "How long?" Marcus asked quietly. "Based on the protein complexity and what I know about similar parasitic organisms on Earth, maybe 72 hours from initial infection to complete transformation." Marcus nodded slowly, then walked to their emergency supplies and pulled out 2 items, a plasma cutter and a small device Sarah recognized as a neural disruptor, designed to cause instant, painless death. "If they get one of us," he said simply, "the other has to make sure the transformation doesn't complete." Sarah took the neural disruptor, her hands shaking. "I understand." They held each other then, in the red glow of the emergency lights, surrounded by the sounds of alien intelligence probing their defenses. 2 humans, alone on a hostile world, facing an enemy that wanted to steal not just their lives, but their very humanity. "We're going to get through this," Marcus whispered into her hair. "We're going to survive, and we're going to warn Earth about what's down here." Sarah nodded, but privately she wondered if survival was even possible. The creatures were too intelligent, too adaptable. They seemed to anticipate every defensive measure, counter every strategy. But she had underestimated something crucial about human nature. Humans don't just survive. When backed into a corner, when facing impossible odds, humans do something that no other species in the galaxy has ever mastered. They innovate. And Sarah Chen was about to prove that human ingenuity, combined with desperate determination, could overcome even the most alien intelligence. Sol 12 marked a turning point in their siege. Sarah had spent the previous night analyzing every piece of data they'd collected about the creatures, looking for weaknesses, patterns, anything they could exploit. What she found changed everything. "Marcus, wake up," she said, shaking her husband gently. "I think I know how to hurt them." Marcus sat up immediately, alert despite having only slept for 3 hours. "What did you find?" Sarah pulled up a complex molecular diagram on their main screen. "Remember how they can phase through solid matter? I think I know how they do it." She highlighted specific protein chains in the creature's biological structure. "They're not actually phasing through matter. They're temporarily converting their molecular structure to match the resonance frequency of whatever they're trying to pass through. It's like they become the same type of matter, temporarily." Marcus studied the data, his engineer's mind immediately grasping the implications. "So they're not supernatural. They're using some kind of advanced bioengineering to manipulate matter at the quantum level." "Exactly. And if they have to match resonance frequencies," Sarah smiled for the first time in days, "then they have to be vulnerable during the transition period." Marcus was already moving toward their equipment storage. "The sonic resonators we use for geological surveys. If we can determine their base frequency and create an interference pattern, we can disrupt their phasing ability," Sarah finished. "Maybe even cause cellular damage if we get the frequency exactly right." They spent the next 6 hours working frantically to modify their geological survey equipment. Marcus rewired the sonic resonators while Sarah ran calculations on the creature's probable molecular frequencies based on their observed behavior patterns. "The tricky part," Sarah explained as she worked, "is that we only get one shot at this. If we're wrong about the frequency, or if they adapt faster than we expect, then we're dead," Marcus finished grimly. "But if we do nothing, we're dead anyway. At least this way we go down fighting." By Sol 13, they had created something that would have impressed engineers back on Earth. A directed sonic weapon capable of generating precise frequency patterns at high amplitude. It wasn't pretty, cobbled together from survey equipment, atmospheric processors, and spare parts, but it was undeniably human in its ingenuity. "Testing Phase 1, Marcus announced, activating their makeshift weapon on its lowest setting. The device hummed to life, sending barely audible vibrations through the habitat's structure. Immediately, their motion sensors detected agitated movement from the creatures outside. "They felt that," Sarah observed, watching the sensor displays. "Look at their movement patterns. They're more erratic, less coordinated." Marcus increased the frequency slightly. Phase 2 test. This time, the reaction was dramatic. The creatures outside began moving away from their habitat, their usual fluid grace replaced by jerky, almost panicked movements. "We're onto something," Sarah breathed. "But we need to get closer to find their exact vulnerability frequency." That's when Marcus made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone else, but made perfect sense to a human engineer facing impossible odds. "I'm going outside." Sarah spun around. "Absolutely not. Marcus, that's suicide." "No, it's science," he replied, checking the seals on his environmental suit. "We need precise readings of their molecular structure during a phasing event. The only way to get that is to observe them up close while they're trying to phase through something." He held up a modified scanner. "I've rigged this to record at the quantum level. If I can get within 10 meters of one of them while it's phasing, you'll get the data we need to calibrate the weapon," Sarah realized. She hated the plan, but she couldn't argue with the logic. They spent 20 minutes checking and double-checking his equipment. The environmental suit was rated for 12 hours of operation, the scanner was functioning perfectly, and he carried a backup communicator in case their main systems failed. "If something goes wrong," Marcus said as he prepared to cycle through the airlock, "you use that weapon at maximum power. Don't worry about me, just make sure these things don't get off Mars." Sarah kissed him through his helmet visor. "Come back to me, you crazy engineer." "Always do," he replied with a grin that didn't quite hide his fear. Marcus stepped out onto the Martian surface for the first time since the siege began. The thin atmosphere carried sound differently here, and he could hear his own breathing echoing in his helmet as he moved away from the habitat. The creatures were waiting. They emerged from the canyon walls like ghosts materializing from stone, their reflective faces turning toward him with obvious interest. Marcus forced himself to walk steadily toward the nearest one, scanner held ready. "Sarah, are you getting this?" he whispered into his comm. Every second, her voice crackled back. "Biological readings are off the charts. Whatever these things are, they're more complex than anything we've ever encountered." The creature he was approaching stood perfectly still, allowing him to get within 15 meters before it began to move. But instead of attacking, it did something unexpected. It began to phase into the ground. "Now!" Marcus shouted, activating his scanner at maximum sensitivity. The readings that flooded back were incredible. During the phasing process, the creature's molecular structure became incredibly unstable, fluctuating between different states of matter at a rate of approximately 47.3 Hz. "Got it," Marcus called out. "Sarah, the frequency is 47.3 Hz. If we can generate an interference pattern at..." The creature's head snapped up from where it was half-hazed into the ground. That reflective surface focused on Marcus with sudden, terrifying intensity. It had understood him. "Marcus, get back here now!" Sarah's voice screamed through the comm. "They know what you're doing!" All 6 creatures began moving toward Marcus simultaneously, their previous caution abandoned. They flowed across the ground like liquid death, closing the distance faster than any human could run. Marcus sprinted toward the habitat, his boots kicking up clouds of red dust. Behind him, he could hear the sound of the creatures moving, not footsteps, but something like wind through stone, getting closer every second. "Airlock cycling," Sarah announced. 30 seconds. Marcus could see the habitat's entrance, but the creatures were gaining. 20 meters, 15, 10. Just as the lead creature reached for him with those crystalline claws, Marcus dove through the airlock. Sarah slammed the emergency seal, and they both watched through the porthole as the creatures surrounded their habitat. But this time, they weren't just probing or studying. This time, they were angry. "They know we found their weakness," Suri said, watching the creatures begin their assault on the habitat's hull. "They're not going to play games anymore." Marcus was already at the sonic weapon controls, inputting the frequency data. "Then neither are we. Sarah, get ready to find out what humans call overkill." As the creatures began tearing through their defenses with renewed fury, Sarah and Marcus prepared to unleash the full power of human ingenuity against an alien intelligence that had made one crucial mistake. It had given humans time to think, and when humans have time to think, they become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The habitat shook as the creatures launched their full assault. Unlike their previous probing attacks, this was pure aggression. They were trying to break through by force, their crystalline claws tearing through hull plating like paper. "Oh, breach in Section A4, Marcus called out, his hands flying over the sonic weapon controls. "Sarah, I need 2 more minutes to calibrate." "We don't have 2 minutes, Sarah replied, watching their structural integrity readings plummet. "They're going to be inside in 90 seconds. Through the internal cameras, they could see the creatures working with terrifying efficiency. One would tear open a section of hull, while another would immediately begin analyzing the internal structure, learning the layout of their habitat in real time. But Sarah had an idea. "Marcus, what if we don't wait for perfect calibration? What if we use their intelligence against them?" She was already moving to the atmospheric controls, her xenobiologist training kicking in. "They're learning our habitat structure, right? They're mapping everything." "Yes, so they're connected to each other somehow. Look at their coordination. They're sharing information in real time." Sarah's fingers danced over the environmental controls. "If they're networked, then disrupting one should affect them all." Marcus caught on immediately. "A feedback loop. If we can overload their shared consciousness, we turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness." Working together with a desperate efficiency that only comes from facing imminent death, they modified their plan. Instead of targeting the creature's phasing ability directly, they would use the sonic weapon to create a resonance cascade through their shared neural network. "Atmospheric pressure to maximum," Sarah announced, flooding their habitat with dense air that would carry sound waves more effectively. "Sonic array configured for wide-spectrum broadcast," Marcus replied. "If this works, every creature within a kilometer is going to feel it." The hull breach alarms were screaming now. The creatures had torn through their outer defenses and were working on the inner pressure barriers. Sarah could see movement in the corridors through the security cameras. "They're inside," she whispered. "Not for long," Marcus replied grimly. "Sarah, when I activate this, get to the emergency shelter and seal yourself in. The resonance might affect human neural activity too." "We do this together," Sarah said firmly, taking his hand. "Whatever happens." Marcus looked at his wife. Brilliant, brave, stubborn Sarah, who had followed him to Mars and was now facing alien horrors with the same scientific curiosity she'd shown when studying microbes. He squeezed her hand. "Together," he agreed. "On 3. 1, 2. The first creature appeared in their main corridor, its reflective face turning toward them with predatory focus. 3. Marcus activated the sonic weapon at full power. The effect was immediate and devastating. The sound that erupted from their modified equipment wasn't just noise. It was a precisely calculated assault on the creature's shared consciousness, designed to create destructive interference in their neural network. The creature in their corridor stopped mid-step, its smooth form beginning to ripple and distort. Through the external cameras, they could see the other creatures reacting similarly, their coordinated movements dissolving into chaotic spasms. But the weapon was affecting more than just the creatures. "Sarah!" Marcus shouted over the incredible noise. "The resonance is affecting the canyon walls." Through their viewports, they could see the ancient rock formations beginning to crack and shift. The sonic waves were finding natural resonance frequencies in the stone itself, causing structural failures throughout the canyon system. It's not just the walls, Sarah realized, watching her geological scanners. There's something else down there. Something big. The scanner readings showed massive, hollow spaces deep beneath the canyon floor, spaces that were now collapsing as the sonic assault continued. And from those collapsing chambers, something was emerging. "Marcus, shut it down," Sarah screamed. "We're not just fighting the creatures, we're waking up their entire colony." But it was too late. The damage was done. As the sonic weapon powered down, the immediate creatures around their habitat lay motionless, their shared consciousness disrupted beyond repair. But from the depths of the canyon, new sounds were emerging. Sounds that spoke of something vast and ancient stirring to life. "How many of them are down there?" Marcus whispered, staring at the scanner readings that showed movement on a scale they hadn't imagined. "Hundreds," Sarah replied, her voice hollow. "Maybe thousands." The reproductive analysis she'd been hiding from Marcus suddenly became irrelevant. These creatures weren't just parasitic reproducers, they were a colonial organism, like ants or bees, but on a planetary scale. The individuals they'd been fighting were just scouts, workers sent to investigate the strange new arrivals on their world. Now they had awakened the hive. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, already moving toward their emergency supplies. "The habitat won't protect us from what's coming." Marcus was checking their rover's status. "The vehicle's operational, but where can we go? They're everywhere." Sarah pulled up a topographical map of the region. "There," she said, pointing to a location about 50 kilometers away. "The old mining station at Olympus Base. It's built into solid rock, and it has a working communications array." "If we can reach it," Marcus added grimly. They had maybe 20 minutes before the main colony reached the surface. 20 minutes to gather supplies, prep their rover, and escape across 50 kilometers of hostile Martian terrain while being hunted by an alien intelligence that now knew exactly what they were capable of. Emergency rations, water recyclers, the portable atmosphere processor, Sarah listed off as she packed. And the sonic weapon components. If we're going to warn Earth, we need proof of what we've discovered. Marcus was loading their rover with fuel cells and spare parts. "The rover's rated for 200 kilometers on a full charge. We should make it to Olympus Base with power to spare." As they worked, the sounds from below grew louder. Not just the creatures they'd fought, but something else. Something that made the canyon walls vibrate with its movement. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "what if we're not the first humans these things have encountered?" She looked up from her packing. "What do you mean?" "The mining station at Olympus Base. It went dark 3 months ago. No distress signal, no explanation. What if they've been hunting humans all along?" Sarah finished. "And we just walked into their territory." The implications were terrifying, but there was no time to process them fully. The ground beneath their habitat was beginning to crack as something massive pushed up from below. "Time to go," Marcus announced, sealing the rover's cargo compartment. Sarah took one last look at their habitat, their home for the past 2 weeks, their laboratory, their fortress. In a few minutes, it would be overrun by alien creatures that wanted to transform them into something inhuman. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his hand on the rover's ignition. Sarah strapped herself into the passenger seat and checked her scanner one more time. The readings showed movement converging on their location from all directions. They had maybe a 5-minute head start. "Let's show these things what humans do when we're really angry," she said. The rover's electric motors hummed to life, and they burst out of the habitat's garage into the Martian dawn. Behind them, the ground erupted as something the size of a building emerged from the depths of the canyon. Sarah didn't look back. She was too busy calculating their route to survival. The Martian landscape blurred past their rover's windows as Marcus pushed the vehicle to its maximum speed across the rocky terrain. Behind them, the canyon was alive with movement as creatures poured from the depths like a living tide. "Contact rear," Sarah called out, monitoring their sensors. "Multiple bogies, closing fast." Through the rear camera, they could see them, dozens of the creatures flowing across the ground in pursuit, their forms shifting and adapting to the terrain. But these weren't the same scouts they'd fought at the habitat. These were larger, more aggressive, built for pursuit. "They're gaining," Marcus reported, his knuckles white on the steering controls. The rover wasn't designed for this kind of speed over rough terrain. Sarah was already working on a solution, her mind racing through possibilities. "The sonic weapon components, can we rig them for a mobile deployment?" While driving across Mars at 80 kilometers per hour, Marcus glanced at her incredulously. "Sarah, that's crazy enough to work," she finished. "These things adapt to everything we throw at them, but they can't adapt if they don't have time to analyze the threat." She was already pulling components from their emergency kit, her hands steady despite the rover's violent bouncing. "I need you to maintain speed and give me 3 minutes. "You've got it," Marcus replied, swerving around a boulder field. "But Sarah, if this doesn't work..." "It'll work," she said with more confidence than she felt. "It has to." Working in the cramped confines of a speeding rover while being chased by alien predators, Sarah began assembling a portable version of their sonic weapon. It wouldn't have the power or precision of the habitat-based system, but it might be enough to disrupt their pursuers long enough to escape. "Frequency modulator connected," she muttered, her fingers working with practiced precision. "Power coupling. There. Marcus, I need you to route auxiliary power to the rear equipment bay." "Done," Marcus replied, flipping switches without taking his eyes off the terrain ahead. "How much power are we talking about?" "Enough to drain our batteries by about 30%, Sarah admitted. "But if we don't use it, we won't need the batteries anyway." The device came online with a high-pitched whine that made both of them wince. Sarah aimed it through the rover's rear window and activated it on its lowest setting. The effect on their pursuers was immediate. The lead creatures stumbled, their fluid coordination disrupted. Several fell behind, their forms flickering between solid and translucent as their phasing abilities malfunctioned. "It's working," Marcus shouted. "But they are adapting already, look!" The creatures at the back of the pack were moving differently now, their pursuit pattern changing to compensate for the sonic disruption. They were learning, evolving their tactics in real time. "Then we don't give them time to adapt," Sarah said grimly, cranking the device to maximum power. The sonic pulse that erupted from their makeshift weapon was like a thunderclap in the thin Martian atmosphere. The pursuing creatures didn't just stumble this time, they convulsed, their forms breaking apart and reforming chaotically as their molecular cohesion failed. But the victory was short-lived. "Sarah, we've got a problem," Marcus called out, checking their power readings. "That pulse drained 40% of our battery. At this rate, we'll be dead in the water before we reach Olympus base." Through the rear camera, they could see the creatures regrouping. The ones that had been disrupted were being absorbed by the others, their knowledge and adaptations shared through the hive mind. The next wave of pursuers would be immune to their sonic weapon. "Then we need a new plan," Sarah said, studying the topographical map on her scanner. "Marcus, there, that ridgeline about 10 kilometers ahead. Can you get us up there?" Marcus followed her pointing finger to a steep escarpment that rose nearly 500 meters above the surrounding terrain. "Maybe, but why would we want to? We'd be trapped up there." "Not trapped," Sarah corrected, "elevated. Look at the geological composition of that ridge. It's mostly iron oxide and crystalline formations. If I'm right about how these creatures navigate..." "They use magnetic fields," Marcus finished, understanding immediately. "That's how they coordinate over such distances. The iron in that ridge would interfere with their navigation." "Exactly. And if we can get high enough, we might be able to boost our communications signal and reach the orbital relay." Marcus gunned the rover toward the ridge, pushing their vehicle beyond its safety limits. Behind them, the creatures had resumed their pursuit. but they seemed more cautious now, their movements less coordinated as they approached the iron-rich formation. The climb up the ridge was harrowing. The rover's wheels struggled for traction on the loose scree, and more than once they nearly slid backward into the waiting creatures below. But Marcus's engineering expertise and Sarah's geological knowledge combined to find a path that their vehicle could handle. "Almost there," Marcus grunted, wrestling with the controls as they navigated around a particularly treacherous outcropping. "But Sarah, even if we reach the top, we're still 50 kilometers from Olympus base." "One problem at a time," Sarah replied, but privately she was wondering the same thing. Their rover's battery was down to 45% and dropping. Even if they could call for help, rescue was days away at minimum. As they crested the ridge, both of them gasped at what they saw spread out below them on the far side. "My God," Marcus whispered. The landscape was dotted with structures, not natural rock formations, but clearly artificial constructions that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Spires of the same crystalline material as the creature's claws rose from the Martian soil, connected by what looked like organic conduits that pulsed with bioluminescent light. "It's a city," Siri breathed. "An entire civilization." But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. Scattered among the alien structures were the unmistakable remains of human technology. Rovers, habitat modules, communication arrays, all partially dissolved and integrated into the alien architecture. The missing expeditions, Marcus realized. They didn't just disappear. They were harvested. Sarah was already scanning the structures with their equipment. "Marcus, look at this. The human technology isn't just being scavenged, it's being studied, reverse engineered. They're learning from every piece of equipment they capture." The implications were staggering. These creatures hadn't just been defending their territory, they'd been conducting a systematic study of human technology and biology, preparing for something much larger. "We have to warn Earth," Sarah said urgently, setting up their emergency communicator. "This isn't just a local threat, they're preparing for an invasion." The iron-rich ridge did indeed boost their signal strength, and after several tense minutes of adjustments, they managed to establish a weak connection with the orbital relay station. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Research Outpost Delta 7, Sarah broadcast. "We have discovered hostile alien life on Mars. Repeat, we have confirmed hostile alien intelligence with advanced capabilities." Static filled the channel for long moments before a response came through. "Delta 7, this is Orbital Control. Your signal is very weak. Please repeat your last transmission." "Hostile aliens on Mars," Marcus shouted into the communicator. "They've been capturing human expeditions and studying our technology. You need to quarantine the planet immediately." More static, then. "Delta 7, we're having trouble understanding your transmission. Are you reporting equipment failures?" "They can't understand us clearly," Sarah said in frustration. "The signal's too degraded." Marcus was already working on a solution. "What if we can't tell them, but we can show them?" "Sarah, that portable scanner you've been using, it's been recording everything, right?" "Every second since we first detected them," she confirmed. "Then we compress the data and transmit it as a burst signal. Even if they can't understand our voices, the visual evidence will be undeniable." They worked frantically to prepare the data burst while keeping one eye on the creatures below. The aliens had reached the base of the ridge, but seemed reluctant to climb higher, confirming Sarah's theory about the magnetic interference. "Transmission ready," Marcus announced. "But Sarah, this is going to drain our remaining battery completely. After this, we're on foot." Sarah looked at the alien city spread out below them, then at the creatures waiting at the base of the ridge. "Then we better make sure this works." She activated the transmission, sending terabytes of sensor data, video recordings, and biological analysis toward the orbital relay in a concentrated burst that lit up their communications array like a beacon. "Transmission complete," Marcus reported as their systems went dark. Now we just have to hope someone up there is smart enough to understand what we're showing them. But their celebration was short-lived. The bright transmission had attracted attention from more than just the orbital relay. From the alien city below, new structures were rising. Tall, antenna-like spires that began emitting their own signals. They're jamming us, Sarah realized. They know we've contacted the outside and they're trying to block any response. Worse, the creatures at the base of the ridge were no longer waiting. They were beginning to climb, their forms adapting to the magnetic interference, learning to overcome yet another obstacle. "Time to go," Marcus said, shouldering his emergency pack. "On foot from here." With their rover dead and the creatures closing in, Sarah and Marcus began the most dangerous part of their journey, a 30-kilometer trek across open Martian terrain to reach Olympus base, carrying only what they could fit in their emergency packs. Behind them, the alien city pulsed with increasing activity. Their transmission had clearly triggered some kind of response, and Sarah had the sinking feeling that they had just accelerated whatever timeline the creatures had been working toward. "Marcus," she said as they picked their way down the far side of the ridge, "what if we're not trying to escape? What if we're being herded?" Marcus paused, considering the possibility. "You think they want us to reach Olympus base?" "Think about it," Sarah continued. "They could have overwhelmed us at any point, but they keep giving us just enough room to run. What if the base isn't a refuge? What if it's a trap?" They stood on the Martian hillside, exhausted, low on supplies, with hostile aliens behind them and an uncertain destination ahead. The smart thing would be to continue toward Olympus base. It was their only hope of long-term survival. But Sarah and Marcus weren't just thinking about survival anymore. They were thinking about Earth, about the billions of humans who had no idea what was waiting for them on Mars. "On Mars, we can't just run," Sarah said finally. "If that base is compromised, if we lead them to more human technology, then we make our stand here," Marcus agreed. "We've warned Earth. Now we make sure these things don't get any more human secrets." Using the last of their equipment and supplies, they began preparing for what they both knew would be their final battle. Not to escape, not to survive, but to ensure that humanity would be ready for what was coming. As the Martian sun set behind them, painting the alien city in shades of red and gold, Sarah and Marcus Chen Rodriguez prepared to show the galaxy what humans do when they're truly backed into a corner. They don't just fight. They make sure their sacrifice means something. The ancient impact crater where Sarah and Marcus made their final stand had been carved into the Martian landscape millions of years ago by a meteorite strike. Now it would witness something equally momentous, the first true battle between humanity and an alien intelligence. They had chosen their position carefully. The crater's rim provided high ground and clear sightlines in all directions, while the iron-rich meteorite fragments scattered across the area would continue to interfere with the creature's coordination abilities. "Perimeter charges set," Marcus reported, placing the last of their improvised explosives around their defensive position. "If they try to rush us, we can at least take some of them with us." Sarah was making final adjustments to their remaining sonic equipment. "I've rigged the scanner to broadcast everything we record directly to the orbital relay. Even if we don't make it, Earth will have real-time intelligence on these creatures' capabilities." As they completed their preparations, both of them took a moment to look up at the Martian sky. Earth was visible as a pale blue dot among the stars. Home, family, everything they were fighting to protect. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, taking Sarah's hand. "About coming to Mars? About the mission?" Sarah shook her head. "No. About not having more time with you? Every day." They held each other in the thin Martian air, two humans alone on an alien world, facing impossible odds with the quiet determination that had carried their species from caves to the stars. "Whatever happens," Marcus said softly, "we've given Earth a chance. That has to be enough. The creatures came with the dawn, flowing across the Martian landscape like a living tide. But these weren't the same scouts they'd fought before. These were warriors, larger, more heavily armored, moving with deadly purpose. "Contact," Sarah announced, watching through their scope. "Estimated 200 individuals approaching from multiple vectors." Marcus activated their defensive systems. "All charges armed, sonic disruptors online. Sarah, remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to learn everything we can about them before—" "I know," she replied quietly. "Data first, survival second." The first wave hit their perimeter at exactly 7:30 Mars Standard Time. The creatures moved with coordinated precision, testing their defenses while staying just outside the range of their sonic weapons. "They're probing," Sarah observed, recording everything. "Look at the pattern. They're mapping our capabilities before committing to a full assault." Marcus triggered the first perimeter charge, sending a shower of rock and metal into a group of approaching creatures. The explosion scattered them temporarily, but they regrouped within seconds, their forms adapting to the new threat. "Adaptation time, 15 seconds, Sarah noted for the record. "They're learning faster than before." The second wave came from 3 directions simultaneously, forcing Sarah and Marcus to split their attention. The sonic disruptors kept the creatures at bay, but each pulse drained their limited power reserves. "Power at 60%, Marcus called out, firing another sonic burst. "We need to make every shot count." That's when Sarah noticed something crucial. "Marcus, look at their formation. They're not just attacking randomly, they're herding us toward the center of the crater." Marcus followed her gaze and saw she was right. The creatures were systematically cutting off their escape routes, forcing them into an increasingly smaller defensive area. "My would they—" Marcus began, then his face went pale. "Sarah, what's directly beneath us?" Sarah checked her geological scanner, and her blood ran cold. "Hollow space. There's a massive cavern system directly under this crater." As if responding to their discovery, the ground beneath them began to vibrate. Something was moving in the depths below, something vast and ancient that made the creatures they'd been fighting seem like mere insects. "We're not on a defensive position," Sarah realized with growing horror. "We're on a feeding platform." The creatures around the crater's rim suddenly stopped their attack, instead forming a perfect circle around the edge. They weren't trying to capture Sarah and Marcus anymore. They were waiting for something else to do it. The ground cracked, then split, then erupted as something the size of a building emerged from the depths. It was clearly related to the smaller creatures, but evolved for a completely different purpose. Where they were scouts and warriors, this was a queen, a living factory designed to process and transform organic matter. "My God," Marcus whispered, staring at the massive entity. "It's beautiful." And it was, in a terrifying way. The queen's form shifted and flowed like liquid crystal, patterns of bioluminescence racing across its surface in complex mathematical sequences. It was alien intelligence made manifest, utterly inhuman yet undeniably magnificent. As the queen approached them, Sarah's scanner detected something that changed everything she thought she knew about these creatures. "Marcus, look at these readings," she said urgently. "The queen isn't just alien, it's artificial. This entire species is engineered." The data was unmistakable. The creature's biological systems showed clear signs of deliberate design, optimization beyond anything natural evolution could produce. "They're not native to Mars," Sarah continued, her scientific mind racing even in the face of death. "They're terraforming tools. Someone or something created them to transform planets." With the queen bearing down on them and their power reserves nearly exhausted, Sarah and Marcus made their final transmission to Earth. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen and Engineer Marcus Rodriguez. Final report from Mars." Sarah spoke clearly into their communicator. "The hostile entities we've encountered are not native life forms. They are artificial organisms designed for planetary transformation. Mars is not their home, it's their project, Marcus added. Earth needs to understand this isn't an invasion, it's preparation. They're getting ready to transform our solar system, and Mars is just the first step. As the Queen reached them, its massive form casting them in shadow, Sarah and Marcus made their final choice. Instead of trying to fight or flee, they activated every piece of recording equipment they had, documenting the Queen's capabilities even as it began to transform them. For Earth, Sarah whispered, her hand finding Marcus's as the transformation began. For humanity, Marcus replied, squeezing her fingers as their consciousness began to merge with something vast and alien. But something unexpected happened during the transformation process. Instead of simply being absorbed and converted, Sarah and Marcus's human consciousness proved more resilient than the Queen had anticipated. Their memories, their knowledge, their love for each other, it all remained intact even as their bodies changed. And in that moment of transformation, they gained access to the Queen's vast knowledge network. They saw the truth about Mars, about the creatures, about the plan that had been in motion for millennia. The creatures weren't the real enemy. They were just tools, created by something far more ancient and powerful, an intelligence that moved between galaxies, transforming worlds to suit its needs. Mars was just one project among thousands, and Earth was next on the list. But now, thanks to Sarah and Marcus's sacrifice, humanity would have something it had never possessed before. Advance warning and 2 human agents inside the enemy's network. As their transformation completed, Sarah and Marcus found they could still communicate with each other through the alien network. They were no longer entirely human, but they were still themselves, and they were in a position to help their species prepare for what was coming. "Can you hear me?" Sarah's voice echoed through the network. "Always," Marcus replied. "Now let's figure out how to save our world." 6 months later, Earth received detailed intelligence about the alien threat through channels that no one could explain. Military strategists found perfect defensive plans in their computers. Scientists discovered new technologies that seemed to appear overnight. Engineers received blueprints for weapons that could counter the alien terraforming tools. Humanity began to prepare for a war they didn't fully understand, guided by 2 guardian angels who had sacrificed their humanity to save their species. The battle for Mars was over. The war for Earth was about to begin. Dr. Elena Vasquez, director of Earth's Planetary Defense Initiative, stared at the latest intelligence report with a mixture of awe and confusion. The data was impossibly detailed. Tactical assessments of alien capabilities, technological specifications for defensive systems, even psychological profiles of the enemy command structure. "Where's this coming from?" she asked her aide, Lieutenant Commander Park. "Unknown, ma'am," Park replied. "The information just appears in our secure networks. Our best cybersecurity experts can't trace the source, but every piece of intelligence we've received has proven accurate." Elena nodded, studying a schematic for something called a quantum resonance disruptor, a weapon that could theoretically disable the alien terraforming organisms at the molecular level. The design was brilliant, incorporating principles of physics that Earth scientists were only beginning to understand. "It's like someone who understands both our technology and theirs is helping us," she mused. In the vast digital consciousness that connected the alien terraforming network across the galaxy, 2 human minds worked tirelessly to protect their home world. Sarah and Marcus had learned to navigate the alien information systems, using their unique position to gather intelligence and sabotage the invasion plans. The next wave of terraforming ships launches in 3 months, Sarah reported through their shared consciousness. Destination Earth's moon. They want to establish a forward base before beginning the atmospheric conversion. "Then we make sure Earth is ready," Marcus replied, already working to compile defensive strategies. "I'm uploading the specifications for lunar defense platforms to the PDI network now." Their existence was strange, no longer fully human, but not entirely alien either. They retained their memories, their personalities, their love for each other, but they experienced reality through quantum networks and data streams rather than physical senses. Across Earth, humanity prepared for war with an efficiency that surprised even their own leaders. New technologies appeared just when they were needed most. Military strategies evolved overnight. Scientists made breakthrough discoveries that seemed to come from nowhere. In the depths of space, the first human ships, equipped with quantum resonance disruptors, began patrolling the outer solar system. On the Moon, construction crews worked around the clock to build defensive installations using blueprints that had mysteriously appeared in their computers. "It's like we have guardian angels," General Morrison commented during a briefing at the Pentagon. "Every time we face a technical challenge, the solution appears. Every time we need intelligence on enemy movements, we get it." What he didn't know was that those guardian angels were closer than he imagined. In the quantum realm between human and alien consciousness, Sarah and Marcus had become something unprecedented. Hybrid intelligences that could think like humans but operate within alien systems. They experienced existence as pure information. Their love for each other translated into harmonious data patterns that resonated through the network. "I miss coffee," Sarah transmitted to Marcus during a brief moment between intelligence operations. "I miss your laugh," Marcus replied. "But Sarah, look what we've accomplished." Earth's survival probability has increased from 12% to 67% in just 6 months. "And rising," Sarah added with satisfaction. "The humans are adapting faster than the terraforming intelligence predicted. They're not just following our guidance, they are improving on it." Deep in the network's core consciousness, the ancient intelligence that had created the terraforming system began to notice anomalies in its Earth operation. Plans were being leaked. Strategies were being countered before they were implemented. Most disturbing of all, the humans were developing countermeasures that shouldn't have been possible with their level of technology. "Investigate the network integrity," the intelligence commanded its subordinate systems. "There is contamination in the Earth operation data streams." Sarah and Marcus felt the probe beginning, like a searchlight sweeping through their digital hiding places. "We've been detected," Marcus warned. "The core intelligence is looking for us." "Then we go deeper," Sarah replied. "And we make sure Earth gets everything it needs before they find us." Working with desperate speed, Sarah and Marcus began uploading everything they had learned about the alien network to Earth's defense systems. Not just tactical information, but the complete structure of the terraforming intelligence, its weaknesses, its fears, its ultimate goals. "Complete stellar cartography of their operations," Sarah transmitted. "They've been doing this for millions of years, Marcus. Thousands of galaxies, billions of worlds. But they've never encountered anything like humanity," Marcus added, uploading psychological profiles. "They don't understand our capacity for sacrifice, for innovation under pressure. That's our advantage." The probe was getting closer, alien security systems converging on their location in the network. "One more thing," Sarah said urgently. "The location of their central command. If Earth can strike there, the entire terraforming network collapses," Marcus finished. "Every world they've conquered gets freed." The alien probe found them just as they completed the final upload. The core intelligence's attention focused on them like a burning lens, analyzing their hybrid nature with cold curiosity. "Impossible," the intelligence transmitted. "Organic consciousness cannot survive network integration. You should have been dissolved and absorbed." "You underestimated us," Sarah replied defiantly. "You underestimated what humans will do for love, for family, for our species." "We are not your tools," Marcus added. "We are your enemy, and we've given our people everything they need to destroy you." The alien intelligence paused, processing this new information. For the first time in millions of years, it encountered something it didn't understand. the human capacity to maintain individual identity, even while connected to a collective consciousness. "You have contaminated the network," it finally responded. "But you have also provided valuable data. Your species' psychological patterns will be useful for future operations." "There won't be any future operations," Sarah said. "Earth is going to stop you." "Homeworld cannot stand against a galactic intelligence," the alien replied. "Your resistance will be noted and overcome." But even as it spoke, the intelligence was beginning to understand that humanity might be different from the thousands of species it had conquered before. On Earth, the final intelligence dump triggered a massive mobilization. The location of the alien command center, massive construct hidden in the galactic core, became the target of humanity's most ambitious mission ever attempted. Operation Prometheus, Director Vasquez announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "We're going to take the fight to them." The fleet that launched from Earth 6 months later was unlike anything humanity had ever built. Ships equipped with quantum resonance weapons, crews trained in tactics that seemed to come from nowhere, and a determination that burned brighter than the stars themselves. As the human fleet departed for the galactic core, Sarah and Marcus managed one last transmission to Earth before the alien intelligence finally located and contained them. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen and Engineer Marcus Rodriguez." Sarah's voice crackled through the quantum static. "We don't know if you can hear this, but if you can, we're proud of you. All of you. Humanity never gives up," Marcus added. "No matter what the universe throws at us, we adapt, we overcome, we protect what we love, show them what we're made of." The transmission ended, but their legacy lived on in every human ship, every defensive system, every tactical manual that bore their invisible influence. They had given their humanity to save humanity, and in doing so, had become something greater than either human or alien. In the depths of the alien network, contained but not destroyed, they waited and watched as their species prepared for the greatest battle in galactic history. Admiral Chen Rodriguez, named in honor of the two heroes who had made Earth's defense possible, stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable as it approached the alien command center. Around her, a fleet of human ships prepared for battle against an intelligence that had conquered galaxies. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen Rodriguez," she announced. "Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every world that has fallen to this enemy. Today we show the galaxy what humans do when we're truly angry." The battle for the galactic core was about to begin, and somewhere in the quantum depths of the alien network, two guardian angels smiled. And that, space explorers, is the incredible true story of Dr. Sarah Chen and Engineer Marcus Rodriguez. Two humans who sacrificed everything to give our species a fighting chance against an enemy beyond imagination. But here's what makes this story even more amazing. It's not just about survival. It's about what makes us human. When faced with impossible odds, when everything seems hopeless, humans don't just give up. We innovate, we adapt. We find a way to turn our greatest weaknesses into our greatest strengths. Sarah and Marcus could have tried to escape Mars. They could have focused only on their own survival. Instead, they chose to become something more than human, to save humanity itself. That's the kind of courage and sacrifice that has carried our species from caves to the stars. Now I want to hear from you in the comments below. What part of this story hit you the hardest? Was it the moment they discovered the alien city? The final battle at the crater? Or maybe the revelation that they became guardian angels in the network? And here's a question that's been keeping me up at night. If you were in Sarah and Marcus's position, would you have made the same choice? Would you sacrifice your humanity to save humanity? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment, and I love discussing these incredible stories with you. If this story gave you chills, if it made you proud to be human, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because I've got so many more incredible survival stories from across the galaxy. Next week, I'm bringing you the story of the human colony ship that got lost in a black hole and emerged in another dimension. And what they found there will blow your mind. You won't want to miss it. And please, please hit that like button. It helps more people discover these amazing stories about human courage and ingenuity. Share this video with anyone who needs to be reminded of what our species is capable of when we're at our best. Remember, we are the descendants of people who looked at the impossible and said, "Challenge accepted." We are the species that turned fire into rockets, curiosity into science, and love into the strength to face any enemy. The universe is vast and dangerous, but it has never encountered anything quite like humanity. And stories like Sarah and Marcus's prove that no matter what's out there waiting for us, we'll find a way to not just survive, but to thrive. This has been another episode of Galactic Survival Stories. I'm your host, and I'll see you among the stars. Stay curious, stay brave, and never forget, we are humanity and we don't give up.